massive Greek army has captured the coast of Troy and is advancing on the city walls. Rumors spread that this was the largest army ever assembled, and everyone waited in fear. The Trojans are preparing to fight with all their might to protect their capital. The Greek army is led by the famous warriors Achilles and Mirmidons, who never lost a battle, while the Trojan army is led by the legendary warrior Prince Hector, heir to the throne of Troy. You are about to watch one of the most famous battles of antiquity. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell before watching the video, so you will be informed about the next chapter in historic battles. Now you can sit back with your tea and coffee. Historic battles begin. The dates are 1200 BC. Agamemnon, the king of the Mycenaean Civilization on the western shore of the Sea of Islands, had annexed all the Greek city-states. These states recognized him as the most powerful king of the time. None of these kingdoms wanted to confront him or go to war with him. So they gathered under Agamemnon's yoke and agreed to send troops when necessary. Menelaus, Agamemnon's brother, married Helen of Greece and became king of Sparta. Thanks to this marriage, Agamemnon's power increased even more and the lands he ruled increased. At that time, the income of these city-states was mostly dependent on sea trade. Because Greece did not have enough land for agriculture, these cities were inevitably forced to engage in maritime trade. In this way, the Greeks became the real rulers of the Aegean and Mediterranean waters. This is why 1400 BC is considered to be the beginning of the most brilliant era of Greek civilization. This brilliant period continued until 1250 BC. During this 150-year period of prosperity, the Greeks were exporting the olive oil and wine they had produced to countries such as Cyprus, Ugarit, Alak, Rhodes, Egypt and Cyprus in the Mycenaean vessels they had produced in an eye-catching way. The Greeks became very rich thanks to this trade. The heyday of the Greeks coincided with the period when the Hittite Empire in Anatolia was at its strongest. A strong Hittite presence in Anatolia allowed the Greeks to trade safely with the eastern Mediterranean ports. However, during the reign of Tutalia IV, one of the Hittite kings, the Hittite Empire began to disintegrate from place to place. Indeed, the Arzava principalities in the south were in constant rebellion. The Kashkas in northern Anatolia, on the other hand, were constantly challenging the Hittite state. In the meantime, the Assyrian state, which was growing stronger and stronger, had succeeded in establishing itself as a great state even against the Hittites. The decline of the Hittites, who were recognized as the dominant power of Anatolia, led to the emergence of some pirates in the Mediterranean. In other words, the weakening of the Hittite state made it impossible for Greek merchants to travel safely in the Mediterranean. This was a disaster for a people whose livelihood depended entirely on sea trade, because the geographical situation of Greece was already not favorable for agriculture. In this situation, the only thing the Greeks could do was to shift the sea trade, which was blocked in the Mediterranean waters, to the Black Sea coasts. In order to do this, it was necessary to cross the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus. The first strait they had to cross was the Dardanelles, and the Trojans controlled this strait. The only way to cross the strait was to throw the Trojans out. That is why Agamemnon set his sights on the Dardanelles, that is, on Troy. The Trojans had fought many countries that wanted to take control of the straits. In none of these wars could the walls of Troy be breached and the Trojan armies be defeated. But by 1200 BC, the unification of the Greek city-states around Agamemnon worried Priam, the last king of Troy, because he knew that Agamemnon had his eyes on the Dardanelles. King Priam did not want to confront Agamemnon because of his growth and power. For this reason, he made peace with Menelaus, king of Sparta, Agamemnon's brother, and sent his sons Hector and Paris to Sparta to establish good relations. Menelaus had organized festivities and celebrations in the Spartan palace to celebrate the peace. The princes of Troy stayed here for a month and participated in the festivities. During these celebrations, a sad news came to Menelaus, king of Sparta. His grandfather on the island of Crete had died, so King Menelaus set off to Crete to attend his grandfather's funeral. The princes of Troy were about to return to their countries when an unexpected event happened. Paris, the younger son of King Priam of Troy, had fallen in love with King Menelaus's queen Helen during their stay in Sparta, and they had a secret affair. Taking advantage of Menelaus's absence, Paris secretly kidnapped Queen Helen by putting her on board Trojan ships. When Menelaus returned from Crete, he received the news and was furious. He went to his brother Agamemnon. He said he had dishonored the Trojans and wanted revenge. An insult to Menelaus was an insult to Agamemnon. An insult to Agamemnon was an insult to all of Greece. Agamemnon seemed very angry about this, but inwardly he was glad, because Agamemnon, who wanted to keep the power in his hands, had a very good trump card to attack the city of Troy, which held the control of the straits. Without wasting time, he called on all the kingdoms in Greece that had pledged allegiance to him. King Priam of Troy was astonished to see the queen of King Menelaus of Sparta with his sons returning from Sparta. He thought of punishing his son Paris and sending Queen Helen back, but it was too late. The news had already spread throughout Greece, and Agamemnon decided to attack Troy with all his might. Troy had no choice but to fight. Its mighty walls had not been breached until now, but they did not know what would happen if Agamemnon brought all of Greece to their gates. Meanwhile, envoys were sent from Greece to Troy. These envoys demanded the return of the kidnapped Queen Helen and her kidnapper, Prince Paris of Troy. This meant that Prince Paris would be brutally murdered by the Greeks. Old King Priam could not bear the pain of a son, so he refused the offer. He also knew that even if he accepted the offer, Agamemnon would still attack. So preparations for the siege began immediately in Troy. Since King Priam was too old to lead this war, Prince Hector, King Priam's eldest son, would take over the defense. Prince Hector was heir to the throne. He was also very loved and respected by the Trojans. He was regarded as the best and bravest warrior of Troy because of his fighting and commanding skills. On the other side, Agamemnon and the Greek city kingdoms were gathering their ships in the port of Athens to attack Troy. The army of Myrmidon, considered the best warriors of all Greece, joined this army under the leadership of Achilles. Achilles was considered the best warrior in all of Greece. Those who exaggerated his abilities even said that he was immortal. Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, and known for his cunning, and Aias and his army, known as the strongest and bravest warrior after Achilles, were also under Agamemnon's command. Thus, this great Trojan expedition, in which all Greek city-states participated, began with the departure of a fleet of 1,000 ships from Athens. Prince Hector had filled the city of Troy with supplies for a long siege. The wealth of this city was legendary. It also had high and thick walls and good warriors. After the necessary preparations were completed in the city, a number of measures and traps were prepared on the coast. Finally, when the Greek army approached the shores of Troy, they found Trojan warriors. The Trojans responded with fiery arrows to prevent the Greeks from landing. In the meantime, they managed to burn a few Greek ships, but the Greek ships kept coming. The Trojans were terrified when they realized that hundreds of endless Greek ships were coming towards them. They did not dare to resist any longer and retreated back towards the city. Thus rumors began to spread that the Greeks were coming here with a countless army. The Greek army soon captured the coast of Troy. Then they attacked the villages, towns, and temples around Troy. They killed the men and divided the women among the commanders. And they didn't stop there. They also attacked other cities that were Troy's allies. No one could stand up to this massive Greek alliance. Among the enslaved women, a noble woman named Briseis, famous for her beauty, had fallen to Achilles. But King Agamemnon had taken this woman from Achilles and owned her. For this reason, Achilles, who had fallen out with King Agamemnon, refused to participate in the war and withdrew Myrmidon's army. Although Agamemnon, who wanted to dominate Troy, had a large and powerful army, he lacked the technological means to capture the city of Troy because the walls of Troy were too thick to be destroyed by catapults and too high to be climbed by ladders. Therefore, the city of Troy was blockaded by the Greeks. All entrances and exits to the city were closed. The Trojans were not alone in this war. According to the second part of the Iliad, the Trojans had many allies in this war. Many countries from various parts of Anatolia and Thrace were helping Troy militarily and economically. That rebellion movements had started in every corner of the empire. The Hittites could not help the people of the Trojan region, which they had dominated for a long time, neither militarily nor economically. Some historians called it a war between East and West, while others called it the First World War of the ancient era. After a long siege, the Trojans convened a council to end the war. Prince Hector argued that Paris was the cause of the war and he was the one who should end it. Accordingly, Paris and Menelaos would fight a one-skirt duel, and the winner of the duel would marry Helen. Thus, the war would end. Accepted by the Trojan council, the Greeks were informed through an envoy. The Greeks accepted this duello offer. The next day, the armies of both sides met in front of Troy. Menelaos, king of Sparta, and Paris, prince of Troy, stepped forward and duel one-on-one. While this one-on-one battle continued with the superiority of Menelaos, Prince Paris, wounded in the foot, fell to the ground. Menelaos was about to kill him when Prince Paris suddenly got up and ran towards the Trojan army. So the duel was broken. Agamemnon then ordered his troops to attack. The Greek and Trojan armies clashed in front of the walls of Troy. The Greeks were outnumbered, but they suffered many casualties because they were in range of the Trojans' archers. The Greek army was also out of formation. The army was melting under the rain of arrows. Since it would be to the detriment of the Greeks to fight here any longer, Agamemnon ordered a retreat. Thus Troy was the winner of this first battle. The Greeks retreated to their camps on the coast. Among the soldiers, the reason for the defeat was interpreted as the absence of Achilles and Myrmidon. Although the commanders tried to persuade Achilles and his soldiers, Achilles refused to join the battle. Agamemnon tried to persuade him by giving him back a slave girl named Briseis, but Achilles did not change his mind. Meanwhile, Trojan troops under Prince Hector led a sudden night raid on the Greek camp. The Greeks were stunned by the unexpected Trojan attack. Many Many Greek ships were set on fire by the Trojans during these attacks. At this moment, when the Greeks were frightened and retreated, the trumpets of the Myrmidons were heard. Achilles, commander of the Myrmidons in black armor, fearlessly charged towards the Trojans with his army. Other Greek soldiers who saw Achilles entering the battle also took courage from him and attacked. At this moment, when the Greek and Trojan armies fought fiercely, Achilles and Hector suddenly faced each other. The soldiers of both sides were following the battle between Hector and Achilles with curiosity. One was the strongest warrior of Greece, and the other the best warrior of Troy. During this duel, Hector killed Achilles. The soldiers on both sides were astonished by this result, because both sides believed that Achilles was truly immortal. Menelaos, king of Sparta, who was terrified, took off Achilles' helmet and realized that it was not Achilles. This person wearing Achilles' armor was Achilles' beloved cousin Patroclus. Agamemnon realized that he could turn the situation to his advantage. He immediately ordered Patroclus' body to be brought to Achilles. Achilles was furious to learn that his cousin Patroclus had been killed by Hector. Now Achilles had a reason to go to war. In the morning, Achilles mounted his horse and rode to the walls of Troy. He challenged Hector to a one-on-one duel to avenge his murdered cousin. It was a challenge from the best warrior of the West against the best warrior of the East. Hector! No one would dare duel Achilles one-on-one, but Hector accepted the challenge, not letting down the trust of the Trojans who believed in him. All Troy went up on the walls and bastions to watch the duel between these two great warriors. It was a struggle between Achilles and Hector. But the winner of the duel was Achilles, the best warrior of the West. After killing Hector, he tied his body to his horse and dragged him back to the Greek camp. Hector's body was torn to pieces and the Trojans were devastated. Thus the Trojans had lost their commander-in-chief and their prince. Shortly after this, the Trojans' allies came to Troy's aid with large armies. Thus, the Trojans were greatly outnumbered. A plague epidemic broke out in the Greek camp. Although the Trojans had lost their prince, the war was going in favor of the Trojans. Agamemnon and his army were thoroughly demoralized by this situation. If Troy and its allies once again attacked the Greek camp on the coast, it would be a disaster for the Greeks. Then Odysseus, king of Ithaca, had a very cunning idea. It was known that there was a large statue of a horse in the heart of the city of Troy. The horse was a sacred animal to the Trojans. According to Odysseus's plan, the Greeks pretended to withdraw from the war and left behind a large wooden model of a horse. Odysseus and the other elite commanders hid inside the horse, while the others sailed out to sea and hid the ships behind Tenedos, where the Trojans could not see them. Seeing that the Greeks were retreating, the Trojans went down to the beach in astonishment and came to this giant wooden horse. They interpreted it as a gift from the gods they believed in. Some of the oracles advised them to take this gift to the city, that way their gods would protect their city forever. There was some opposition to this idea, but in the end the council decided to take the horse to the city. So they immediately took the horse to their city. The Trojans had now won the war. The Trojans, who had been partying all night long with peace celebrations and passed out drunk on wine, would be caught unawares by the Greeks in the horse. Sneaking out of the horse in the darkest part of the night, the Greeks killed the sleeping Trojan guards and opened the city gates. Then they signaled to the Greeks waiting outside. The Greek army immediately mobilized and attacked the city of Troy. They burst through the open city gates and turned the city upside down. The Greeks showed no mercy to anyone that night. They brutally killed old people, children, and even babies. On Agamemnon's orders, they set the city on fire. The Trojan soldiers put up a weak resistance against the Greeks who had entered their city, but it was useless. While the city was being sacked by the Greeks, Prince Paris found an opportunity to take revenge on Achilles for killing his brother. At a moment when Achilles was fighting, he shot him dead with an arrow. Thus, the story of Achilles, who was called the Immortal, ended here. Plundering the city, the Greeks finally captured the citadel. They also massacred King Priam and his family. Hector's young son was thrown over the castle walls and killed. Paris, who was trying to protect Helen, also died here. Hector's wife was given to Achilles' son Neoptolemus. At the end of the war, Menelaos, king of Sparta, returned to Sparta with his wife Helen. After Troy was massacred and its cities burned by the Greeks, very few Trojans, especially Aeneid, one of the princes of Troy, managed to survive this destruction. The survivors scattered to various parts of Anatolia and continued their lives there. The happiness of King Agamemnon, who returned to his country with a great victory, did not last long. The war had indeed lasted too long, and during this time, Clytemnestra, Agamemnon's queen, had cheated on him with someone else during his absence. This woman, who was also Helen's sister, took the opportunity to kill him in the palace. Thus ended the story of Agamemnon, the great king of the Greeks. Although the Greeks defeated the Trojans and destroyed the city of Troy, they still could not achieve their real goal. That is, they could not cross the straits and colonize the Black Sea coast. Because the Dorians, who had fled from the Great Famine in Europe, had started to invade the Mycenaean Civilization and turned the Greek city-states upside down. Defeated by this great Dorian invasion, the Greeks were forced to migrate to Anatolia. The migration of the Greeks to Anatolia caused the tribes here to migrate further east. This wave of migration grew so large that it led to the collapse of the Hittite state. In the following processes, it would also cause the collapse of the Mitanni and Babylonian states. The Trojans, who were in the middle of this migration wave, realized that they could no longer hold on in Anatolia and migrated to the coasts of Italy. Another tribe that migrated to the Italian coast was a group of Sakas. Thus, the Trojans and the Sakas, who had migrated here before, mixed and fused and formed a tribe called Etruscans. Therefore, this new tribe in Italy had roots both in Anatolia and Central Asia. Later, this tribe would lay the foundations of the Roman Empire, one of the most powerful states in history.